Welcome into the Leadership Sandbox. I am Tammy J, your host. And in the Sandbox this week, we are in session number 2 of a 4-part series called Dear HR, I'm Not Whining, I'm Warning You. And today I want to get one thing straight before we get into our content. I want to share this with you. Millennials and Gen Z, y'all, this is for the boomers and the Xers out there. They're not fragile, friends. They're frustrated. They're bringing bold ideas, strategic insights, and real-time feedback into the workplace, to the boardroom table. And they want to have a voice. And too often, they're being told to sit down, be quiet. Now, if you've ever been shut down like that, I have. I know that to be true. Then this is for you. Why is that? Because being dismissed by a boss who just knows better because they've put in more time than you, or being labeled as a problem for speaking up, then you're going to want to tune in, sit down, grab your pen and paper, because I'm going to give you a 4-part strategy on how you conquer this issue. And if you're HR or an executive leader or leadership of a team, this series is for you because it's your playbook to listening differently, to tuning in differently, so that you don't lose your best people, your bright people, because of silence, because you've silenced them, or lose them because they are resigned by the fact that you're shutting them down and not giving them a voice at the table. So we're diving into real conflict, real scripts, and we're going to help you flip the script today. Take it from noise to insight inside the sandbox with the boomer VP and the millennial manager. That's today's episode. They're the same story, different frequencies. This is our Speaking Up series of Dear HR, I'm Not Whining, I'm Warning You. We're going to dive in 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Hey leader, want to elevate your leadership and foster a healthier culture? Think about this. Your culture is not defined by what you say. It's actually defined by how well you listen. It's about how you handle everyday conversations. We understand that some of those conversations can be tough to navigate. Are you unsure of how to respond in these moments? We can help you turn employee feedback into transformational action. Download the free Leadership Sandbox HR Translator Toolkit and discover 5 powerful scripts to help approach tough conversations with clarity and purpose. Register for your downloadable toolkit by visiting the podcast page of our website, bondgroupenterprises.com/podcast. Click episode 81 to start transforming your conversations today.
All right. Welcome back into the Sandbox, friends. I want to tell you a little story about a conversation that I had recently, a few weeks ago, between 2 boomer and millennial gentlemen in the workplace. And I was sitting down meeting with them about just some of the challenges that they were seeing. And what was interesting is I'm talking with the leader who happened to be a boomer, and they're like, hey, this millennial manager, man, he just doesn't listen. Now, truly, let me say it this way. The boomer did not say, I'm the boomer and the millennial doesn't listen. What they said was, hey, he just doesn't listen. And every time I give him direction, he challenges me. He's so disrespectful when he does it. And he does it in a group of people, or he'll do it one-on-one. I never can just give him a direction and he just does it. I would have never gotten away with that back in my day. Right. It's true. You wouldn't have. And then just a few hours later, I'm on another call, and I'm on a call with the actual team member that is the quote millennial in the room. And he's like, you know what? He just doesn't listen to me. My boss just says, I bring ideas, I bring insight, I bring feedback, and I get shut down every time, whether I do it in a group or I do it one-on-one. Like, he even finishes my sentences for me. And I want to push pause on this story. This is a real scenario that I've just experienced a few weeks ago. And I want to know what you see here. Think about what I just shared about the 2 views. 2 very smart, well-intentioned professionals, very well trained in their craft, say the exact same thing about each other. So what's the problem? Well, in this episode, we're going to talk all about how leaders can stop defaulting to blame and the real disconnect, start listening for the real disconnect, because it's not a personality clash. It's not a generational clash. What it is a generational translation gap. It's a frequency issue. And if you're HR or in senior leadership addressing this with your teams, It's your job to decode it before the culture breaks under the weight of the silence, the weight of the issue. Because the more that we shut people down and say, no, not now, quiet, you haven't put your time in yet, we're shutting down the opportunity for them to expose the things that we've been stepping over, as I say, the cracks in the sidewalk, but also to expose the opportunity of what could be different to improve, but also to expose the opportunity of collaboration. Because there will be a point in time, friend, when you're going to want all voices at the table to collaborate. And then you're going to be sitting there, if you're this leader that shuts people down, wondering why people are silent with you. I was in a room just the other week with a group of leaders that were wondering why their team was silent. And we ended up having this very bold conversation about who speaks up and who doesn't, and why people are silent and why they're not. And it was a really interesting exercise to take them through so they could actually see they were all saying the same things. They're just responding and reacting different to the same scenarios. So our opportunity is to expose that. Because when we see this dynamic between boomer leaders who are trained to climb, right? They're trained to climb in and at hierarchies, and they show up early to get the worm, right? Early bird gets the worm. And if you're 15 minutes early, that actually means you're 15 minutes late, right? They follow chain of command and they protect legacy. When you're millennials and Gen Z, younger generations were raised on collaboration. They were raised on the screen time that actually gives them immediate feedback. And so these younger managers at the table, they want to ask why, but when they do that, the senior leader hears disrespect. And this room that I was in just last week with this group of leaders, what was funny is we had multiple generations. They're all actually saying the same thing at the table together, frustrated. And I'm on the flip chart and I'm writing things down. And then we went through and we actually identified how they're all talking the same thing about the same issue. But the frustration is that we've framed it to it being about people versus the behavior that we want to correct. And I speak to this a lot to get it off the personality. I guess I'll say it this way. If you have a millennial at the table who's asking why, don't shut them down because you think it's disrespectful and that because you think the person is disrespectful. Actually open up to ask more. Tell me more what you mean by that, right? When you hear it as disrespect, you've labeled them, you've removed yourself from the opportunity for what's possible in any conversation. And when you shut it down, that younger leader hears they don't matter. And if both sides say, I'm not being heard, it's not a people problem, friend. It's a frequency mismatch. So the conversation that I had the other week with these two gentlemen, two different styles of communication, it's a frequency issue. It's not a people problem. It's not even that somebody's being disrespectful. And it's not that, because really they both thought each person was being disrespectful. They were saying the exact same thing about each other. It was a frequency mismatch. And just like my grandfather used to do when he used to carry his transistor radio in his pocket. And you could hear him walking around the yard doing his gardening or whatever. And you'd hear him and you'd have to holler out, hey, Gramps, tune it in. I can't hear the song, right? Because it'd just be going out of frequency a little bit. So you'd have to tune it in. Same thing with your team. Because here's the reality. 57% of millennials say that they feel micromanaged by a Gen X or a boomer. That's what LinkedIn workplace reports say. And only 19% of boomers say that they value collaborative decision making, which means 19% of the people want to just come in and actually have a conversation. That's a huge number on the other side of that scale that don't want it. They just want to come in, point, shoot, delivery style. That point and shoot delivery style of communication or giving feedback or giving direction does not work long term. And it's important, boomers, that we know, or if that's your style, even Gen Xers do this, and there are even other generations that do this, but if that is your style, then and you're not collaborative and you've gotten that feedback, it's your opportunity to learn, how can I be more collaborative, to bring more voices to the table, even when it's uncomfortable? Because sometimes it might be uncomfortable. So how do we do that? Because when HR says we've had several conversations, but they just don't get along about these two people, that's actually an experience that can be changed quickly, because the truth is they do get along. They're more alike than they are different. They just don't understand how to interpret each other, not in facial expressions, body language, not in tone. and not even in the words that are being spoken, right? So listen, it's not personal, it's programming. Let's change the frequency. Because when we make it about bad behavior and it's not about bad behavior, it's about embedded norms. We have something that we can get in and dig underneath. Boomers were rewarded for loyalty, right? They were rewarded for that independent thinking. They were rewarded for taking initiatives. Millennials were taught to question systems, to ask for feedback, and to contribute early and often, right? They expect the opportunity to be developed and they expect to get that feedback. That's what they were trained up. That's what technology has done. Instant gratification, instant feedback. And when the two values collide, you get frustration, not dysfunction, just misalignment in communication styles at that. Respect isn't silence, friends. It's knowing how to challenge assumptions with care. It's knowing how to challenge even expectations or challenge beliefs or challenge assignments with care and lead with clarity. Remember, you've heard me say it before, friends. Clarity is kindness. Let's bring clarity into the workplace. How do we do that? If we don't address this, like if HR or the leader that's at the table doesn't address these issues, one of two things is going to happen. Millennials are going to shut down, right? They're going to emotionally disengage. And your boomer VP, executives, senior leaders are going to become known as the one who blocks it. And there might be other names that are going to go along with that, but they're going to be the blocker of innovation, and they're going to build resentment because they're not building adaptation for themselves or others. They're going to build resentment in themselves and in others because they're shutting people down. And no one wants to work in a team of resentment. Neither one of these scenarios are going to end well. So what do we do? What do we build? We build what I call a translation bridge. Here's how that works. We want to shift the energy to fix the friction. We want to start reframing it. So if you're the VP and you hear, you know what, you're wrong, from HR or from a team member, more importantly, this millennial says in questioning, I have a question about this, and the VP hears you're wrong, we actually want to reframe that, our thinking into, actually, I want to offer another view that might increase impact. Now, if I can actually bring that, phrase it that way, instead of saying, I want to do this different, which means we're doing it wrong in interpretation, we change it to, are we open to other perspectives? Are we open to another view, potentially to increase impact? Now, listen, if you're the one that's bringing that question forward and you get told no, not now, it doesn't mean not ever. It just means no, not now. It means that you have an opportunity to make a note and come back to it later, not in the meeting, not when we're problem solving in the moment, and not with the whole team. You can knock on the door and say, got 5 minutes for me? I want to go back to the conversation where I offered another view and you said not now. I'm curious, would you be open to me to share that view, because I'm using it as a learning opportunity? Now, if you get somebody knocking on your door, friend, that has that question, my invitation for you is to say yes. And it may not be right then. It might be come back at 2:00, but create the space to bring the conversation forward, because it took a lot of bold guts to get into that curiosity mode, to want to go in and ask the question. Remember, when people question, it's not because they think you're wrong. They're more often than not questioning for their own understanding and their own learning opportunity. It's just another view. Now, here's another reframe. Managers who hear stop talking can do better to reframe, to translate, is what I really want to say. Let me process what you're saying and we'll revisit it. That gives you that open door to come back later and ask for that time. You might need to go back and you might get put off again. Keep at it. Don't give up. Now, what you use in your tone and in your body language when you bring that forward again is important, and we're going to get into that. And if you're the coach in this situation, HR or senior executive, and you're coaching both parties who really are saying the same thing but different, you actually want to get them to share their intent before their content. So my intention, so if I'm the manager, I'm saying to my boss, hey, my intention is that I want to learn, because I'm newer or younger on the team, or I want to learn from the senior execs on the team, or I want to learn in this situation, but I also want to feel valued in bringing my insight because I'm seeing something a little different than the other voices at the table. That's my intention, not to shut people down or not to tell people that they're wrong, right? I then want you to do this. I want you to take the opportunity as the coach or the HR or the leader to run what I call uh, a little exercise on how I like to receive feedback. Okay. Now, these sessions are really important to do with the team. And it gives people the opportunity of how they to share, think about it, write it down, and then share with the group how I like to receive feedback. If you have a large team, you might break into teams of 2 and 3 to share this collectively and then share it with the whole group. So I get comfortable sharing it one-on-one with somebody, but then I can share it with the whole team, right? How do I like to receive feedback? Get really clear on that. Don't Oftentimes people start with, well, I know what I don't like. Great. Now reframe it into what you do like. And that's what we want to share. Not what I don't like, what I do like. Leaders don't need to speak louder. They just need to translate better. All right. Let me say that again. As a leader, you don't need to speak louder to get your point across. It's really about listening and translating better so that you get the full view of what's happening in the room or at the table. And here's your action plan. I have a four-part action plan for you that you can actually put into place immediately, whether you're the leader, HR, you're the coach, whoever it is that's facilitating this conversation between the different viewpoints. Facilitate a listening reset. So what's that? Ask both parties to repeat back what they heard, not what they assumed. Oftentimes, our translation is clouded by the assumptions and expectations that we have based on how we've seen people perform in the past, based on the relationship that we have. If we have labeled somebody on our team that they're always the complainer, they're always the whiner, they're the ones that always object, they're the ones that always fill in the blank, then we're going in with that pre-programmed assumption in our head. And we want to stop that, change that, but then do it by asking a question, right? What is it that you heard? And I want to hear for that because then it takes away what my assumption is. Okay. Then step number 2, I want to map each person's communication style. You can get them up on the wall on flip charts to do this. It's really easy. You can map it with them one-on-one and bring it back together. But it's also a quick exercise that you can do with the group. How do you prefer to receive feedback? Direct, written, in a huddle. What's the value of direct? What's the value of written? What's the value of in a huddle? What's the concern or the fear of, right? What's your experience with? Have them map all that out to come up with really, bottom line it, how do I like to receive feedback? And then compare it. And if you've got somebody on your team that prefers that direct feedback, but you actually prefer written feedback, great. Now I know how to communicate with you and you know how to communicate with me. Then I got to explain, what does direct feedback look like? And what does that bottom line direct feedback look like? Because I've heard this before too, where you ask for that feedback and you say, okay, I want direct feedback. And they go into the whole storytelling. Now I'm known to say, please stop the storytelling, bottom line it. Ask me the question or get to the bottom line. 1 sentence or 2. I don't need the story. Thank you for wanting to share the story with me, but I'm going to push pause with you, Sally Joe, and I would like for you to just bottom line it for me. When we do that, I'm not being mean. It's because I like direct feedback and I have time for that direct feedback. If I want it written, if I want written feedback, then I want it again bulleted, or I want it bottom lined. I don't want the whole story around it. Oftentimes when people get into storytelling, it's because they don't feel heard, seen, and understood. So I need to tell you the whole story and all of the details and everything that goes with it because it's my one opportunity to tell you what I'm experiencing. So be the one, when you hear their preferred feedback model, ask for clarification on direct feedback. What's that look like to you? Written feedback. How do you like to receive that? Obviously in an email, but do you like it bulleted? Do you like the story? What do you want? Get clear on it. Compare the two. Then if it's, I want it in a huddle because I like the group think. Cool. What's that look like? So if we put a 5-minute timer on group think on something, is that for that feedback sharing? Is that going to be good for you? Yeah, 5 minutes will work. Cool. All right. We're going into huddle. We're going to give feedback. We got 5 minutes. Ready, go. Right. I don't care if you have to have a talking stick, friend, and pass it around. Bottom line is when you go through this exercise, when you compare communication styles, And then you talk about what that is. You get clear on who the other person is, what they need, and how they show up. And I tell you what, it makes conversations so much easier. Then we're going to go step number 3, and we're going to teach an upward feedback etiquette. And this is to help your younger leaders or your new additions to the team, because this also isn't just generational. It's also about onboarding our newest members to the team so they start to know the culture. We want to help them understand the timing, tone, and delivery when speaking with the team, but also you want to help people understand the timing, tone, and delivery when they're speaking their truth, right? In power. We want to help them understand how that's received. I was with one group and I was talking with the team, and they just kept having this, shutting this one individual down. And I watched the body language and I watched the eyes roll and all that. I was like, curious. I'm noticing that when certain individuals talk, you're actually shutting it down. Well, it's because and then they actually named it. They said, I know you're talking to me because of my facial expression. When I hear him talk, this is what I hear. And they were talking all about tone and delivery. And he's just like, I'm just asking, I'm just excited, or when I get frustrated, I know that I might get louder, or actually just project a loud voice, or whatever. He brought it up. And when they took time to understand, it's just, we make so many assumptions, and it was such a powerful moment. But when we can help leaders, younger leaders, team members understand the timing, because not every time is a teaching time, right? There's not every moment is a teaching moment. And you got to read the room. You got to read the table. You got to understand, is this the time to bring it up? What's the tone that I'm using? If I have a lot of anxiousness behind it because I've been sitting on it, and then I just feel it, it's going to come out different. Ooh, I want to put that in check. What am I reacting to? How do I want to be seen? What's the tone that I want to use? Get it clear in your head before you speak that out, but communicate that, right? Take the time to offer and teach upward feedback etiquette, how it works for our team. Step 4 is hold a one language agreement meeting. What's that? Build a shared vocabulary. This is so important when it comes to challenging the status quo, challenging assumptions, correcting behaviors, being curious, right? Challenging why we're doing something. Instead of saying, well, why'd you do it that way? Immediately people are going to get defensive. Or why are we doing it that way? Start with the help me understand, or I'm curious. I'm really curious. When have we tried this in the past and it's worked? Or when have we tried this in the past and it hasn't worked? What's the similarity to when we've tried this before and it seemed to not work before? Because usually when those challenges come up, it's usually based on, more often than not, it's based on, I have a different set of knowledge than you, or it's based on how we've done something in the past that we know doesn't work, that maybe I have a remembrance to, or on a previous team, we tried something similar. So you want to just say, you know what, I'm curious. On a previous team, we tried something similar. And can I just have 2 minutes to ask my question about how this is going to be different? Now, listen, when you understand timing, you might realize, ooh, read the room, Tam, this isn't the right timing for it. I'm going to hold that. And I want to listen to the excellent expertise at the table to see if my question gets answered. Because sometimes you can flip that switch to challenge your question too early instead of just listening and waiting for the room to process it. Start to read the room. But bottom line is, come up with a one language agreement together of how you challenge, how you correct, and how you are curious what that looks like. Because listen, friend, culture isn't what you say, it's what your leaders model. Teach them how to listen, and the culture will follow. Let me say that one more time. Culture isn't about what you say, friend. It's about what you model. Teach your leaders, teach your team how to listen, and the culture will follow. So if your team is frustrated, if you have team members that are frustrated, leaders and managers and team members that are frustrated with one another, if your leader feels disrespected, if you have people that feel they're not listening to each other, pause and ask this question. Are we simply misunderstanding each other? Or are we just translating through different filters? Is our frequency off? Because conflict isn't the enemy here. Silence is. And when we shut people down in silence, you're going to get a very milk toast kind of environment. It's going to be a very bland environment. And that silence is an enemy. And leadership isn't just about directing. It's about decoding, deciphering, tuning in the frequency on your transistor radio to hear clearly, to see clearly, right? To be in clarity with your team and seek to understand and be curious with your team. Decode and demystify the challenges simply by tuning in to the right frequency with each other. It's a game changer. And just remember, friends, it's not about whining, it's a warning sign. And what we want to make sure that we understand is how to build the bridge between all parties, everybody involved, so that we're all communicating more effectively with more impact, greater impact, and not pointing fingers and blaming each other for what was said or wasn't said, or how they said it, or the facial expression or the body language, because they never. When we get locked into that, we're not listening and decoding. We're not tuning our frequency. We're finding ways out, and that shuts people down, right? So get on the same page, get on the same frequency. No matter who you are at the table, speak up, share your truth, find the timing, do it with respect, and you'll win every time. Tammy J. Bond, this is the Leadership Sandbox. I'll see you next week for episode number 3 on the Dear HR, I'm Not Whining, I'm Warning You Speaking Up series. Make it a great day. God bless you.